Well, good morning. As the title may give away the video, I haven't thought what we're going to do yet actually, but today is my birthday. Yes, it is indeed, it is my birthday. And if you are a ex-Jehovah's Witness, you know how special this day is. So yeah, it's a bit funny because I have hold on. I have a few cards. From my wife, from my son, even though he's in America. He actually rung me up at 2:45 last night in the morning to wish me a happy birthday, and I had to open up his present, and he'd sent the present through eBay, and he was quite excited. He knew I'd love it, and I did love it. And here it is here. That there is a figure, a berserker. No, sorry, it's an urukai. Sorry, it's not a berserker. Is it? Yeah, it's an urukai. From, of course, the film The Lord of the Rings, and this is there were only 2,000 of this particular statue made. This is number 1999, which coincidentally is the year my son was born. Spooky or what? So there you go. That's so I opened up that to around about no, sorry, it wasn't 2:45. It was about 3:05 in the morning. He woke me up. He sent me a little. He sent me a little phone call through Messenger and woke me up and to say happy birthday. So I got a card. The card was already here. So that was the card from my son. I got a card from my wife here. Card from my wife here. And these cards from my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, from my other and sister-in-law and her family, and from my nephew, the son of my sister-in-law. So that was the cards that I have received, and that's the sum total cards. Of course, I have a few happy birthdays on Facebook, which are really appreciated too. But needless to say is none of those cards were, as you can see, from my mother, who probably more than anybody else in this whole world would remember my birthday more than anybody else, because she obviously gave birth to me. And it is such a sad thing that, on reflection, that my mother hasn't celebrated my birthday for, well, nearly 50 years. Nearly 50 years she hasn't celebrated my birthday. And it's a real shame. It's a real shame. I know that I've done another video why Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate birthdays, so there's no point me going in it again. But it does, you do get this bit of a sad feeling, because obviously at some point my mother's going to pass away. And then obviously there won't be any cards. There wouldn't be any cards anywhere. It's just a shame that that a parent cannot recognise their firstborn's birthday, a special event for them, just because they belong to a religion which bizarrely has just banned the celebration of birthdays and of anything at all, really. Just because they say it goes against their version of what they think the Bible teaches. It's a real shame, it is. And even when Jehovah's Witnesses come out of the organisation, they still find it hard to celebrate their own birthdays, because they've been brought up for so many years not to celebrate their birthday or anybody else's. And testament to this is that when I don't know how old I was, I think it was, I was in my 30s, and I remember it was around about maybe 8 o'clock one night, and all of a sudden I went, oh my God, it's my birthday today. That was before Facebook. Of course, there weren't, even if you're a witness today and you put up the month and day that you were born, you'll get loads of people who may be your friends or aren't witnesses saying, well, happy birthday, whatever, and I don't know how they deal with that. But that was before the days of Facebook, obviously, when there wasn't any reminders. So imagine that. Imagine going through your day and then all of a sudden 8 o'clock that evening, just remembering it's your birthday. It shows how that event, your birthday, becomes a non-event, and it's really sad. it becomes a non-event, especially if you're a parent, whereupon the day of your child's birth is a big deal, and everybody in the congregation, because that's your birthday. It's the day that you're born, your birthday. So on your birthday, when you come into this world, all the congregation send you and the child lots of cards. Well, you get all the cards. Well, as the happy parents, and then you get lots of presents to help you, with your baby, And a year later on, it becomes a non-event. It just becomes a non-event, which is really extraordinary because they've already celebrated the birthday. It's really odd. And then 1 year later, all subsequent years, it becomes a complete non-event. And when you leave Jehovah's Witnesses, of course, your family, if you've been in there for a wee while, if your family's still witnesses, you're going to get no cards. Then all of a sudden you think, oh, it's my birthday today. And it's all of a sudden you can end up the day of your birthday out of the witnesses and still no cards whatsoever. I've got no cards from my side of the family. This is all, from my wife's side of the family, but no cards at all. And, it's, it's about as lonely as Michael Collins was. Now, that was an interesting segue into my next point, because Michael Collins was the guy who was in Columbia, and Columbia was the command module which orbited the moon. While on the moon was the Eagle with Armstrong and Aldrin in it. And yes, today, you see, this is the strange thing. The 21st of July, it's recognised this side of the Atlantic as the day that man first walked on the moon. But of course, the other side of the Atlantic, it's down as the 20th of July, because we're ahead. It happened round about 5 to 4 in the morning in Britain, and subsequently, you can keep on going, heading east, and the time difference changes again. So it's 5 to 4 in Britain, and I remember the event really, really well because it was my birthday, because my mother and father did get me up at this pre-witnesses, because I actually had a present. And they got me up to watch this event, and we watched it on a black and white TV. The screen was slightly ovular, and of course all the images were in black and white, so it made no difference to us that we had a black and white TV. And we watched this, and it was absolutely, utterly amazing. And I must have watched it for a couple of hours with them as Aldrin came out, and then they did walks. And then eventually I said to my mum and dad, look, I must have said, look, can I go out and see my present? And my present was, they'd bought me a bike. So as man was taking his first tentative steps on the moon, I was taking my first tentative steps riding round the block, as we called it, where I lived, on my bike with no stabilisers, literally, on my own, just, that's one small cycle for a man. And I did that, and I was cycling round the block while Aldrin and Armstrong were picking up like samples on the moon. I was cycling around the block, and it must have been around about 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. I was cycling there, and the sun was already up, and therefore I've always had an affinity with the moon landings, purely because, of course, it happened on my birthday. I saw the event, and I still think it's still the greatest achievement by man. And I remember when I heard the news that Neil Armstrong had passed away. I was at a wedding in Barrow-in-Furness, and my son just came out and says, did you hear that you literally were sitting down having it was the reception, and he just all of a sudden, he was outside, it was a sunny day, and next thing is he peered the other side of the window, and he said, have you heard the news, Dad? I says, no. He says, Neil Armstrong's died, and literally I burst into tears. So obviously the alcohol had sort of affected me, but the news that he died really, really affected me, and I burst into tears, because he was ultimately my first hero ever, and somebody that I thought that one day I'd meet, and obviously once somebody dies, that's it, game's a bogey. And it was really sad. I've been a few people have reminded me sometimes of the time that I burst into tears when Neil Armstrong died, but it really affected me. And then I finally got to do something I'd always wanted to do 10 years ago today. Well, 10 years ago today, on my birthday in America, we were in Florida, and I got to go to Space Kennedy, and I got to go to the launch pads of Apollo 11, and it was just absolutely amazing. But coincidentally, even though it was 40 years on from the time that Armstrong walked on the moon, I got it slightly wrong, because in America it was the 20th. And I was celebrating on the 21st, so I was a bit out there, but never, needless to say, it still was a special day for me. And my son got to meet an astronaut at Space Kennedy in Florida. He got to meet a guy called Jerry Carr, who was been the commander of Skylab 4. Now, after Armstrong passed away, I personally do like collecting things, as you can see from this wonderful statue here, and over there are two prints from the Lord of the Rings films, which we bought in New Zealand, and they have been signed by Peter Jackson and by the artists, and also by Gandalf the Grey. And just over there, which you can't see, is actually a picture of the Beach Boys signed by Brian Wilson. So I do like to collect my stuff. And I always wanted an autograph of Neil, I was going to say Neil Diamond there, or Neil Young, no, I haven't got those. I always wanted an autograph of Neil Armstrong, because funny enough, Neil Armstrong comes from this area. Yes, the clan Armstrong are a border family, which means that they're a family that grew up on the disputed border between England and Scotland. And the ancestral home is a place called Langham, which is not far from here at all. And after Armstrong had walked on the moon, he's probably been the only man who has been invited to become a free man of Langham. And he came over and went to visit the ancestral castle and also Langham as well. And I know people who met him, who all of a sudden all the schools stopped in the area, and they went to Langham to meet Neil Armstrong. So, that's the connection in this area. But needless to say, I always wanted to get an autograph of Neil Armstrong. And the autographs of Neil Armstrong are a lot of money. They are a lot of money. And then I used to get this book which used to, detail these autographs you can buy. They're all tried, tested and approved, and, sold by an auction site in England. And up came this autograph of Neil Armstrong, and I thought, right, I've got to get this one. This is about 6 years ago. I thought, I've got to get this one, and I got the winning bid. It was like 250 quid for an autograph, a genuine autograph, which had been, certified and came with proof of Neil Armstrong. Now, amazingly, what I only found out last night is, I'll show you the autograph here. You see, this is the autograph here, if you can see this. So that's Neil Armstrong's autograph, although when I'm looking at it, it looks backwards. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, that's Neil Armstrong's autograph, right? That's his autograph. And what this is, it says, to Mr. and Mrs. Frederick Brisson, they were to go to the Century Plaza Hotel in Los Angeles on August the 19th. And the reason why this is quite important here is because when the astronauts came back from the moon, they weren't allowed out to meet the friends and family. They had to be in quarantine for like 3 weeks, just in case they picked up some virus from the moon. And finally, when they were only given the all clear just before this date. On this date, on August the 13th, there was a ticker tape parade in Chicago and in New York. And have you ever seen the pictures? It looked fantastic. They're going down the road, and there's probably 6 million people came out to see them. And shortly afterwards, in the evening, there was something called it's like the meal of the century. at the Century Plaza Hotel in Los Angeles, California, and anybody who was anybody was at this meal. So Mr. and Mrs. Frederick Brisson, I never knew who that was. And only last night I thought, I need to get this out because I've actually got a lovely picture of Buzz Aldrin taken by Neil Armstrong, which I want to put in a frame. And I actually thought, who is this Frederick Brisson? So anyway, I went online to find out who Frederick Brisson was. I thought, who is he? And the only Frederick Brisson I can find was somebody who was a producer. I think he won an Oscar as well. And his wife was somebody called Rosalind Russell. And then Cary Grant apparently introduced this couple to each other. And I was thinking, can it be them? Los Angeles, Hollywood? You know, could it be them, or is there another Frederick Brisson? Because it just says Mr. and Mrs. Frederick Brisson. If it says if it said Rosalind, then it was that a confirmation. So I just thought to myself, is how can I find a full list of everybody who attended that meal? Well, lo and behold, if you go online, a lot of the documents relating to President Nixon's presidency have now been, I don't think they've been leaked, but they've now been unclassified, and you can actually see a lot of these. Now, there's basically there are documents to show who President Nixon met every day of his presidency, who he met, what time, the date, blah, 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 blah. And here we have here, it says here, I've printed this off, but it says Office of the White House Press Secretary, August the 13th, 1969, and it says the White House. Guest list for the dinner at the Century Plaza Hotel, Wednesday, August the 13th, 1969. So, of course, the lead names are, you've guessed it, the President and Mrs. Nixon, the Vice President and Mrs. Agnew, I think it was Spiro Agnew, I think it was. Then we get to Mr. and Mrs. Neil A. Armstrong, Colonel and Mrs. Edwin E. Aldrin Jr., Colonel and Mrs. Michael Collins. And then it goes through loads of people, literally anybody, was at this. I've looked at this list and it is really exhaustive. And when you look at the people on it, it's unbelievable. Like anybody who's anybody was there. So then I thought, right, if this is... I'm going to find out who this person is. And it's all in alphabetical order, and I don't know how many people invited this meal, it must have been vast. But you come all the way down the list to Brisson. Brisson is there. And it says, Mr. and Mrs. Frederick, Mrs. Actress Rosalind Russell, Beverly Hills, California. So yes, I've now find out who this is, and I can only assume that when they went to this meal, these Mr. and Mrs. Brisson went to the meal, the producer and the actress, and apparently she's been in lots of famous films and won Golden Globes and was up for Academy Awards. But this was their invitation to get in, and obviously when they went in, showed the thing, showed there's where you're going to eat. I can only imagine that when it came up to, we've got to get Neil Armstrong's signature here. I'm thinking, what can we get for him to sign? Whoa, what you don't take in paper. You've got a handkerchief maybe, but not a hanky. But no, you want something. So of course they took up this for Neil Armstrong to sign, and he signed it. Shame that Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins haven't signed it, but they haven't signed it. So there it is. It's just. Just a little interesting story which I just picked up last night when I was, whiling away the wee hours watching. I went to see the Apollo 11 movie last night. It's fantastic. That's unbelievable. So anyway, that's it. That's just. It is my birthday, and I'll probably have my wife's working today, so I've cracked on and done some painting. Not painting a picture, I mean painting, that sort of painting, cracking painting. It's a cloudy day today, it's not the best today, so I'm going to sit down now because I've recorded a lot of programs about Apollo 11, and I'm just going to really absorb myself into this monumental event. And for those out there that say never happened, it's a bright conspiracy. Really, honestly, just look in the mirror and give yourself a slap, because at the end of the day is, it's quite simple. There was like 400,000 people involved in getting the man to the moon and back. That was just for Apollo 11. Of course, it was Apollo 12, 13 were not up in there, and there was 14, 15 and 16, I think there was 17 and 18. So, you know, there was a lot of moon launches. And the people who think that 400,000 people could keep stum after 50 years, you're talking bollocks. You know, at least somebody quite close would at some point just said, son, let me tell you, you know when the astronauts went up on the lift? Yeah, Dad. Well, when they got to the top, they came back down again. Did they, Dad? Yeah. So how did we see them get out? The capsule got parachuted. I don't know, son. Anyhow, you see where I'm going with this. In other words, that, you know, I just, you know, conspiracy theories are good. You know, they're a laugh, but they are only a theory. It's never conspiracy fact. And I believe that man did walk on the moon 50 years ago today, because I watched it happen, and I believe the Russians, they were in a space race with the Americans at the time, if it never happened, I'm sure the Russians would be the first to have revealed it by now. I'm sure somehow somebody would have they would have had somebody in a NASA would have proof, a paper trail, you name it, there would have been something. But sorry, you know, I don't know why people always want to sort of downplay great achievements by man. You know, it's really bizarre. It's very sad. And unfortunately, I think that the whole moon walk landings these days, for youngsters, they don't understand the risk that these people took and what a big deal it was. And for me and my generation, who still believe it really happened, it was a big deal. It was a monumental achievement. And I think it's something 50 years on should be absolutely praised and respected for. And bizarrely, I think somebody brought out a little article, I think the Watchtower had said that man would never ever get to the moon because God wouldn't allow them. God wouldn't allow them because that was God's domain. Well, sorry, I think that's another nail in the coffin, that the Watchtower talks a load of great hairy bollocks, and that maybe there isn't a God. I don't know. Anyway, I'll leave that with you and see you another time. Thanks again for watching, and thanks again for all the subscribers and also the people who put up with my ramblings and also my music. Some people actually like it, but there you go. It's a personal choice. Anyway, goodbye. Have a nice day.